It started as a tragedy, the kind that shakes an entire community to its core. A quiet home, a mother, 5 children, all gone in a single night. The fire moved fast, too fast. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already too late. Neighbors would later say they heard nothing, no screams, no desperate calls for help, just silence, and then flames swallowing everything. Authorities called it an accident, an electrical fault, a tragic, heartbreaking coincidence. But not everyone believed that. Because from the very beginning, something about that night didn't sit right. How does a fire take 6 lives without a single person escaping? Why are there no signs of struggle? And why were certain details buried deep in the official report, never quite add up? For 13 years, the case sat untouched, cold, forgotten, filed away as just another unfortunate loss. Until now. Because just weeks ago, something changed. A letter arrived. No return address, no name, just a few chilling lines written by someone who claimed to know exactly what happened inside that house the night the fire started. Someone who insisted it was no accident. And suddenly, a case that had been silent for over a decade began to speak again. The question is, who sent the letter? And, more importantly, what are they trying to reveal before it's too late? The letter arrived on a Monday morning. No one noticed it at first. It sat among bills, advertisements, and unopened envelopes on the cluttered desk of a junior administrative officer inside the local records department. Plain white, no stamp marking anything unusual, no indication that what it carried inside would reopen a case buried for over a decade. It wasn't until midday that someone finally tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just a message, short, direct, and deeply unsettling. You were wrong about the fire. Check the back door. They never made it out because they couldn't. That was all. At first, it seemed like a prank, the kind of anonymous message that surfaces every now and then when old tragedies resurface in the public mind. But something about the wording, something about the certainty in those words, made it impossible to ignore. By the end of the day, the letter had been passed up the chain, and by evening it landed on the desk of Detective Inspector Marcus Hale, the same man who had stood in front of that burned house 13 years ago, watching smoke rise into the night sky. He hadn't thought about the case in years, not properly anyway, but the moment he read the letter, it all came back. Every detail, every unanswered question, every doubt he had tried to bury. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the paper still in his hand. The office around him buzzed with the usual noise, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, but none of it reached him. His mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker. The back door. That detail alone was enough to make his chest tighten, because if there was one thing he remembered clearly about that night, it was the back of the house, or more accurately, what they didn't find there. 13 years ago, the fire was reported just after 2 a.m. By the time emergency services arrived, the house was already engulfed. Flames tore through the roof, collapsing sections of the structure before firefighters could even begin to contain it. It was a losing battle from the start. Marcus had arrived shortly after. He still remembered the heat, the way it pressed against his skin, even from a distance. the crackling sound of wood giving way, the thick, choking smoke that turned the air into something almost solid, and the crowd. Neighbors gathered in the street, some crying, some shouting, some just staring in disbelief as the house burned. 6 people inside, a mother and her 5 children. No one made it out. By sunrise, it was over. What remained was barely recognizable, a charred skeleton of what it had once been a home. The investigation that followed was swift, too swift, Marcus would later admit to himself. The official cause, electrical fault in the living room, likely sparked by faulty wiring. The fire spread rapidly due to old materials in the house and lack of working smoke detectors. It was tragic, but it was explainable. Case closed. At least that's what the report said. Marcus stood up abruptly, grabbing his coat. He hadn't visited the property in a decade. In fact, he wasn't even sure what stood there now, if anything at all. But something inside him, something he couldn't quite ignore, told him this letter wasn't random. And if it wasn't random, then someone out there knew something. The drive was quiet, the kind of silence that gives space for memories to creep in. As he made his way through familiar streets, details began to surface, small things he hadn't thought about in years. The neighbor who insisted she smelled something strange before the fire started. The firefighter who mentioned the flames behaved oddly, though no one followed up on what he meant. The report that noted the back door was found closed, but never locked. At the time, none of it seemed enough to challenge the official conclusion. Now, it all felt different. When Marcus finally pulled up to the location, he slowed the car to a stop. The house was gone. In its place stood an empty lot, overgrown with weeds, surrounded by a rusted metal fence that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. No memorial, no sign that 6 lives had ended there. Just silence. Marcus stepped out of the car, his gravel crunching beneath his shoes. The air felt heavier here, or maybe that was just in his head. He approached the fence slowly, his eyes scanning the ground beyond it. 13 years ago, this was where it all happened, and now it looked like nothing at all. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter again, reading it for what felt like the 10th time. Check the back door. Marcus exhaled slowly. All right, he muttered to himself. Let's check the back door. The gate creaked as he pushed it open. Each step into the lot felt like stepping back in time. He moved carefully, as if the ground itself might still hold answers. The layout of the old house lingered in his memory. The front entrance, the narrow hallway, the staircase to the right, and the back door. It would have been just past the kitchen. He stopped. Right there. Even now, standing in an empty lot, he could almost see it. The shape of the house, the placement of the rooms, the exact spot where that door once stood. Marcus crouched slightly, studying the ground. At first, there was nothing, just dirt, weeds, time erasing everything. But then, something caught his eye. A faint, uneven line in the soil. Not natural, not random. He brushed away some of the loose dirt with his hand, revealing something that looked like a small piece of metal, partially buried, corroded with age. Carefully, he pulled it free. It was a hinge, old, burnt, warped, but undisputably part of a door. Marcus turned it over in his hand, his mind racing. Why would a hinge still be here? Why wasn't this cleared during the original investigation? And more importantly, why did the letter point him here? A cold realization began to form. If this hinge had been overlooked, then what else had they missed?
Marcus stood up slowly, scanning the area again, this time with a different mindset. Not as someone revisiting a closed case, but as someone standing at the beginning of a new one. Because if the letter was right, if the back door held the key to what really happened that night, then everything they believed about that fire was about to change. And somewhere out there, the person who sent that letter was watching, waiting, and possibly running out of time.
Marcus didn't leave the site immediately. The hinge sat heavy in his palm, far heavier than something so small had any right to be. He turned it over again, studying the warped edges, the blackened surface, fire damage no doubt, but there was something else. A slight bend, unnatural, not caused by heat alone. He crouched again, this time more deliberate. If one piece had been left behind, then others might still be here. The original investigation team had cleared the scene quickly, too quickly. Back then, the focus was on containment, on closing a case that seemed straightforward, an electrical fire, a tragic loss, no signs of forced entry, no accelerants detected, at least none officially recorded. But now, standing here, Marcus felt the weight of something overlooked or ignored. He began scanning the ground more carefully, brushing aside patches of dry grass and loose soil. Minutes passed, then more. His fingers grew dirt-stained, his knees pressing into the uneven earth. And then, another fragment, this one smaller. Metal again. He lifted it slowly. A latch, burnt but intact enough to recognize. Marcus frowned. A hinge, and now a latch, both from the same area, both tied to the back door. His pulse slowed, but his mind sharpened. He stood up, stepping back slightly, trying to visualize the structure as it once stood. The kitchen would have opened directly to the back exit. A simple door, wooden frame, basic lock system. Nothing complicated. Nothing that should have trapped 6 people inside. Unless it wasn't meant to let them out. Marcus's jaw tightened. Unless it wasn't meant to let them out. The thought settled heavily. He reached for his phone and dialed. "Control, this is Hale. I need access to the original case files, full archive, fire reports, scene photos, forensic notes, everything, and I mean everything." A pause. Then, "That case is closed, sir." "Not anymore," Marcus said firmly. "Reopen it." He ended the call without waiting for a response. The wind picked up slightly, rustling through the tall weeds around him. For a moment, the lot didn't feel like it was empty anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath. The archive room smelled like dust and time. Marcus stood in front of a long metal table, files spread before him, thick folders labeled with dates, names, evidence logs. The case number stared back at him like something unfinished, because now it was. He flipped through the initial reports first. Fire origin, living room. Cause, electrical fault. Spread, rapid due to structural materials. Fatalities, 6. No signs of forced entry. No evidence of foul play. Marcus exhaled sharply. It all looked clean. Too clean. He reached for the photographs next. Scene images, charred walls, collapsed beams, smoke-stained ceilings. The devastation was complete. Almost nothing had survived. Almost. He slowed as he reached the section labeled Exterior, Rear. 3 photos. That's all they had taken of the back of the house. 3. Marcus stared at them, his eyes narrowing. The first showed the back wall, blackened, partially collapsed. The second, the door, or what was left of it. And the third, Marcus froze. He pulled the image closer, zoomed in. There it was. Subtle, easy to miss, but now that he was looking for it,
impossible to ignore. The door frame. It wasn't just damaged, it was warped inward, not outward, inward. Marcus's fingers grew cold. Fire pressure, structural collapse, those could explain outward damage, but inward? That suggested force, external force, as if something was holding the door shut. His grip on the photo tightened. "Why didn't we see this?" he whispered. Or maybe they had, and chose not to. Marcus flipped through the rest of the file, faster now. Witness statements. Most were brief, uncertain, but one caught his attention. An elderly neighbor, lived 2 houses down. Statement recorded the morning after the fire. "I woke up before the sirens, heard something like a bang, not loud but sharp. Then I smelled something strange, not like normal fire, something stronger." Marcus leaned back slightly. A bang, strange smell, details that had been dismissed at the time, or buried. Marcus grabbed another report, fire notes. Most were standard, except for one line. "Rear exit inaccessible upon initial approach." Marcus read it again, then again. Inaccessible. That wasn't the same as blocked by fire. That meant something else, something physical. Marcus stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor behind him. This wasn't just a missed detail. This was a pattern. The hinge, the latch, the warped frame, the statement, the note, all pointing to one thing. The back door had not been a way out. It had been a barrier, sealing them inside. His phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Marcus stared at it for a moment before opening it. No greeting, no explanation, just a single line. "You're looking in the right place." Marcus's expression hardened. Whoever sent the letter, still watching, still guiding him, which meant one thing. This wasn't over, not even close. He typed quickly, "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. Someone who couldn't speak until now. Marcus's fingers grew cold. "Why now?" he muttered. But there was no answer. The typing indicator appeared, then disappeared. Gone. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. This wasn't just about reopening a case. This was about someone stepping out of the shadows after 13 years. And if they had stayed silent for that long, then whatever they knew was dangerous enough to keep buried. Marcus looked back at the files, then at the photo of the warped doorframe. 6 people, trapped, no escape, not because they couldn't find the door, but because the door had been taken from them. He closed the file slowly. There was only one question left now. Who would do something like that, and why? But deep down, Marcus already knew. Fires destroy evidence. They erase timelines. They turn crime scenes into accidents. If someone wanted to make 6 deaths disappear, a fire was the perfect way to do it. Marcus grabbed his coat again, because the next step wasn't in the files. It was out there, in the past, in the people who were there that night, and in the one person who had just decided to break their silence. The case hadn't just been reopened, it had been exposed, and whatever truth was buried beneath those ashes was finally starting to burn its way back to the surface.
Marcus didn't go home that night. Sleep felt like a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. Not with the case unfolding the way it was. Not with someone out there watching his every move, guiding him piece by piece toward a truth that had been buried for 13 years. Instead, he drove, back through the same streets, past the same houses, until he found the one name that had been sitting quietly in the case file, overlooked for years. Evelyn Carter, the neighbor, 2 houses down, the one who heard the sound, the one who smelled something different. Marcus stepped out of the car and looked up at the house, smaller than he remembered, The paint slightly faded, the front garden overgrown but still cared for. A single light glowed from inside, casting a warm yellow against the curtains. She was still here. After everything, she never left. Marcus approached the door and knocked. Once, then again. A pause, shuffling footsteps, and then the door creaked open just enough for a cautious face to appear. Older now, much older, but the eyes, they were the same. Sharp, watchful, afraid. Yes, her voice was thin, uncertain. "Mrs. Carter," Marcus said gently. "My name is Detective Inspector Marcus Hale." The moment he said his name, something changed. Recognition, not immediate, but it settled in quickly. "You," she whispered. "You were there." Marcus nodded. "I was." A long silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, she opened the door wider. "I always wondered if you'd come back." Marcus stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of tea and old wood, the kind of place where time seemed to move slower, safer, but beneath that calm, there was tension, years of it. They sat in the living room. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she poured tea into 2 cups. The clink of porcelain against the saucer echoed louder than it should have. "You remember that night?" Marcus said carefully. It wasn't a question. Evelyn didn't look at him. "I never forgot it," she replied. Marcus leant forward slightly. "Your statement, you mentioned a sound, a bang, and a smell." Her hands froze. For a moment, Marcus thought she might deny it, brush it off like so many witnesses do when time dulls memory. But instead, she nodded. "I told them," she said quietly. "I told them everything." "What did you hear?" She swallowed. It wasn't like an explosion, not big, not loud, just sharp, quick, like something being struck. Metal, maybe. Marcus felt his pulse steady. "Metal," he repeated. She nodded again. "And the smell?" he asked. This time she hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the cup. "It wasn't just smoke," she said slowly. "It came before the fire got big, strong, chemical. I remember thinking it didn't feel right." Marcus exchanged that thought with the images in his mind. Accelerants, something used to help fire spread, something that wouldn't belong in a simple electrical fault. "Why didn't you push it further?" Marcus asked gently. Evelyn finally looked at him, and what he saw in her eyes was fear that had never left. "I tried," she said quietly, "but after a while, people stop listening." Marcus didn't respond immediately, because he knew that was true. Cases get closed, voices get buried, and sometimes truth gets labeled as confusion. But now things are different. "Mrs. Carter," Marcus said steadily, "I need you to think carefully. That night, did you see anyone, anything unusual before the fire started?" Evelyn stared at him. Longer time this time, as if weighing something, as if deciding whether to step into something she had avoided for years. And then she exhaled. "There was a car." Marcus leant forward instantly. "What kind of car?" "I don't know. Dark, parked further down the street, engine running." Marcus's mind sharpened. "What time?" "It was late," she said, "before the fire. Maybe 20 minutes. I remember because it felt strange. No one parks there at that hour." "Did you see anyone inside?" Evelyn hesitated again, then nodded. "Just a shape," she said, "in the driver's seat. I couldn't see clearly, but they were watching the house." Marcus felt a cold certainty settle in. Watching, waiting. This wasn't random. This wasn't an accident. This had been planned. "Why didn't you include that in your statement?"
Marcus's voice dropped. Because I was told not to. The words hit harder than anything she had said. Marcus's expression darkened. Told? By who? Evelyn's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Her eyes shifted toward the window, then back to him, and in that moment, Marcus understood. This wasn't just fear of being ignored. This was fear of something or someone still out there, still powerful enough to keep her silent after 13 years. I can't, she said suddenly, her voice breaking. Marcus leant closer, his tone firm but calm. You've already said enough to reopen this case. If someone tried to keep you quiet, he paused, then they have something to hide. Evelyn's hands shook more now. You don't understand, she whispered. Some things are better left buried. Marcus shook his head. No, he said quietly, not this. A silence fell between them again, heavy, unavoidable, and then a sharp sound cut through the room. Marcus's phone. He reached for it immediately. Another message, unknown number. He opened it, and for the first time since this began, his expression changed completely. Not curiosity, not focus, but something deeper, something darker, because this message was different, longer, more direct. You're getting close, but you're asking the wrong people. Marcus's jaw tightened. Another line appeared. If you want the truth, go back to the night of the fire. Look at who arrived before you did. Marcus's grip on the phone tightened. Before he did. That meant emergency response, police, fire services, or someone else, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Marcus slowly lowered the phone. Evelyn was watching him now, her fear growing. What is it? She asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately, because his mind was already racing ahead, replaying timelines, arrival logs, who was first on the scene, and more importantly, who had the opportunity to shape what was found, or what was missed. Marcus stood up. Thank you, he said quietly. Evelyn didn't respond. She just watched him, as if she already knew this was far from over. And as Marcus stepped out into the night, one thought echoed louder than anything else. The fire didn't just destroy a family, it protected someone, and now that protection was starting to break.